morning, guys. I have a question for you guys. How many of you guys have heard of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? Oh, quite a few of you. I would like you to kindly turn to the person sitting next to you and tell them one thing that you know about Martin Luther King Jr.
He got he was a preacher in a church. He was people build him and make the earth bigger.
All right. We have about 2 minutes. I have time for us to have about 2 people share something their partner told them that they knew about Martin Luther King Jr. What did your partner share with you?
He got shot, and I said that he was a preacher at a church.
Okay, so he was a preacher and he got shot. And let's see if I can share one more. Yes, ma'am. What did your partner share with you?
He got shot.
He got shot. That is something that a lot of people do remember about Martin Luther King Jr. But today I want to read you a special book. I found this book when I got the chance to tour Martin Luther King Jr.'s childhood home in Atlanta, Georgia. This book is very special. It was written by his sister Christine King Ferris. She wanted to write this book because she felt like everyone knew all the stories about when Martin Luther King was an adult, but not that many people really knew about what he was like as a little boy. So today I want to share with you some stories about Martin Luther King and what he was like as a little boy. Again, my book is My Brother Martin, A Sister Remembers Growing Up with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. by Christine King Ferris, illustrated by Chris Soon-Pete.
Why did you read that?
All right.
No, what is this?
Gather around and listen as I share childhood memories of my brother, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I am his older sister, and I've known him longer than anyone else. I knew him long before the speeches he gave, and the marches he led, and the prizes he won. I even knew him before he first dreamed the dream that would change the world. We were born in the same room, my brother Martin and I. I was an early baby, born sooner than expected. Mother dear and Daddy placed me in the chiffon drawer that stood in the corner of their upstairs bedroom. I got a crib a few days afterward. A year and a half later, Martin spent his first night in that hand-me-down crib in the very same room. The house where we were born belonged to Mother dear's parents, our grandparents, the Reverend and Mrs. A.D. Williams. We lived there with them and our Aunt Ida, our grandmother's sister. And not long after my brother Martin, who we called M.L. because he and Daddy had the same name, our baby brother was born. His name was Alfred Daniel, but we called him A.D. after our grandfather. They called me Christine, and like 3 peas in one pod, we grew together. Our days and rooms were filled with adventure stories and tinker toys, with dolls and Monopoly and Chinese checkers. Although Daddy, who was a very important minister, and Mother dear, who was known far and wide as a musician, often had work that took them away from home, our grandmother was always there to take care of us. I remember days sitting at her feet as she and Aunt Ida filled us with great memories of their childhood and told us about all the wonderful places in the world. And of course, my brother and I had each other. We 3 stuck together like the pages in a brand new book. And being normal young children, we were almost always up to something. Our best prank involved a fur piece that belonged to our grandmother. It looked almost alive with its tiny feet and little head and gleaming glass eyes. So every once in a while, in the waning light of evening, we'd tie that fur piece to a stick and hiding behind the hedge in our front of the house, we would dangle it in front of unsuspecting passers-by. Boy, you could hear the screams of fright all across the neighborhood.
Awesome!
Then, there was the time Mother dear decided that her children should all learn to play piano. I didn't mind too much, but ML and AD preferred being outside to being stuck inside with our piano teacher, Mr. Mann, who would rap your knuckles with a ruler just for playing the wrong notes. Well, One morning, ML and AD decided to loosen the legs on the piano bench so we wouldn't have to practice. We didn't tell Mr. Man, and when he sat, crash, down he went. But mostly we were good, obedient children, and ML did learn to play a few songs on the piano. He even went off to sing with our mother a time or two. Given his love for singing and music, I'm sure he could have become as good a musician as our mother, had his life not called him down a different path. But that's just what his life did. My brothers and I grew up a long time ago, back in a time when certain places in our country had unfair laws. That said, it was right to keep black people separate because our skin was darker, and our ancestors had been captured in far-off Africa and brought to America as slaves.
I know what an ancestor is.
Atlanta, Georgia. Atlanta, Georgia, the city in which we were growing up, had those laws. Because of those laws, my family rarely went to the picture shows or visited Grant Park with its famous cyclorama. In fact, to this very day, I don't recall ever seeing my father on a streetcar. Because of those laws and the indignity that went with them, Daddy preferred keeping ML, AD, and me close to home, where we'd be protected. We lived in a neighborhood in Atlanta that's now called Sweet Auburn. It was named for Auburn Avenue, the street that ran in front of our house. On our side of the street stood two-story frame houses similar to the one we lived in. Across it crouched a line of one-story row houses and a store owned by a white family. When we were young, all the children along Auburn Avenue played together, even the two boys whose parents owned the store. And since our house was a favorite gathering place, those boys played with us in our backyard and ran with ML and AD to the firehouse on the corner, where they watched the engines and the firemen. The thought of not playing with those kids because we were different, because they were white and we were black, never entered our minds. Well, one day, ML and AD went to get their playmates from across the street, just as they had done 100 times before. But they came home alone. The boys had told my brothers that they couldn't play together anymore because AD and ML were Negroes. And that was it. Shortly afterward, the family sold the store and moved away. We never saw or heard from them again. Looking back, I realized that it was only a matter of time before the generations of cruelty and injustice that Daddy and Mother Dear and Mama and Pop and Aunt Ida had been shielding us from finally broke through. But back then, it was a crushing blow that seemed to come out of nowhere. Why do white people treat colored people so mean? ML asked Mother Dear afterward. And with me and ML and AD standing in front of her, trying our best to understand, Mother Dear gave us the reason behind it. Her words explained the streetcars our family avoided and the whites-only sign that kept us off the elevator at City Hall. Her words told why there were parks and museums that black people could not visit, and why some restaurants refused to serve us, and why hotels wouldn't give us rooms, and why theaters would only allow us to watch their picture shows from the balcony. But her words also gave us hope. She answered simply, because they just don't understand that everyone is the same, and someday it will be better. And my brother ML looked up into our mother's face and said the words I remember to this day. He said, "Mother Dear, one day I'm going to turn this world upside down." Excuse me, I'm sorry. In the coming years, there would be other reminders of the cruel system called segregation that sought to keep black people down. But it's Daddy who showed ML and AD and me how to speak out against hatred and bigotry and stand up for what's right. Daddy was the minister at Ebenezer Baptist Church, and after losing our playmates, when ML, AD, and I heard our father speak from his pulpit, his words held new meaning. And Daddy practiced what he preached. He always stood up for himself when confronted with hatred and bigotry, and each day he shared his encounters at the dinner table. When a shoe salesman told Daddy and ML that he'd only served them in the back of the store because they were black, Daddy took ML somewhere else to buy new shoes. Another time, a police officer pulled Daddy over and called him boy. Daddy pointed to ML sitting next to him in the car and said, "This is a boy. I am a man, and until you call me one, I will not listen to you." These stories were as nourishing as the food that was set before us. Years would pass and many new lessons would be learned. There would be numerous speeches and marches and prizes, but my brothers never forgot the example of our father and the promise he had made to our mother on the day his friends turned him away. And when he was much older, my brother ML dreamed a dream that turned the world upside down. Oh, right, guys, I want to ask you guys something. Oh, thank you. How do you think ML and AD felt when their friends did it? I think they felt sad?
And upset.
And upset, angry. Okay, one more. How do you think they felt?
Upset.
Upset. Okay. Most definitely. I think I would definitely be very upset. What do you think he could have done about it back then? Yes.
You could ask them to be your best friends too.
He could have asked them to change their mind and be their best friends anyway. Okay. What else could he have done? Yes.
He could tell the world that white and black can play together.
Okay, so he could do what he did. He could go on to tell the world that it should be different. All right. I want you guys to turn to your friends once more, and I want you guys to tell your friends what was your favorite story about Martin Luther King from our book that we read today.
They were sitting, and if they could run piano, they would switch the guy would hit him.
All right, guys. I have time for a couple more people to share their favorite story from our book today. Somebody new. Yes, ma'am. What was your favorite story from our book today?
The speeches.
The speeches, okay. Does anyone else have a different favorite story from our book today? Yes, sir.
When he gave speeches to people.
When he gave speeches to people?
When he turned the world upside down.
When he turned the world upside down. Okay, I have time for one more. What was your favorite story from today?
When he scared the people with
When he scared the people with the fox? Okay. So let me ask you something about that. When he scared the people with the fox, was that really a good choice?
No.
So was Martin Luther King Jr. did he always make the best choices?
No.
Did that make him a bad person?
No.
That made him a good person and a bad person.
Well, and I think we're all
A fine person.
A fine person. Do we all always make just the best choices we can?
No.
We're people. That's great. We try to, don't we? And I think that's what's important to remember, that you should always try to make good choices. But just because you may slip once in a while, that doesn't make you a bad person, and that it does not mean that you can't grow up to do great things just like Martin Luther King did.
Or my daddy.
All right? Well, I want y'all to think about that today, and I hope you guys have a wonderful afternoon. I appreciate your time. Thank you for spending your morning with me.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.